The night was heavy with silence, the kind that presses down like a weight on your chest, but my heart was louder than the crickets outside. I stared at the glowing screen, my hands trembling as I scrolled through messages I wasn't meant to see, words carved into my soul like knives. It was Emily's voice I heard in my head, laughing, mocking. Every sweet promise we ever made turned to poison in seconds. I whispered to myself, she really did it. She actually betrayed me. Every line of text between her and Daniel was a betrayal wrapped in smug cruelty. And my mind replayed every late-night talk, every secret I shared, every moment of blind trust. How could someone I called my best friend rip the ground from beneath me with such casual cruelty? I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palm until blood kissed the skin, but pain was nothing compared to the hurricane brewing inside. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of my phone, shadows crawling along the walls, like demons mocking me. Rage and disbelief tangled inside me, one screaming to destroy her, the other begging for answers that would never come. Emily had always said, "Trust me, I've got your back." Now those words sounded like a cruel joke etched in fire. I remembered how she'd been smiling earlier that day, her perfect little mask in place, like she hadn't already carved a knife through my heart. I could see her smirk in my head as I sat in the stillness, feeling every memory collapse like glass shattering on cold concrete. My chest burned, my throat ached, and my eyes felt like they were boiling. No scream came out, only a whisper laced with venom. "I make her regret this." Daniel's name burned on the screen, a traitor's companion to her lies. But it wasn't him I hated most. It was Emily, the girl who once swore we were family, who once cried on my shoulder, who once promised forever. Every bond we had was gone in an instant, replaced with an unquenchable thirst for revenge that felt like the only thing holding me together. The betrayal wasn't just cruel, it was final. Some part of me knew my life had just split in two, the part before betrayal, and the part that began tonight. And in that second, something inside me broke, but also awakened. She thought she could take everything from me and walk away untouched, but she had no idea who I would become after this. The storm wasn't coming. I was the storm. The night stretched on like an eternity as I sat in silence, staring at the walls that seemed to close in. Every second replayed her betrayal in sharper detail, each memory twisted into something vile. My chest tightened with every inhale, rage burning hotter with each thought. The clock ticked, steady and cruel, reminding me time was passing, but healing was nowhere in sight. I whispered, "Emily thought she could bury me. She'll see just how wrong she is." The silence answered back, colder than her lies. I closed my eyes, but memories forced their way in, playing like cruel films. Emily smiling at me across a cafe table, her words dripping with loyalty, her hand brushing mine like we were unbreakable. Every laugh, every secret, every promise felt like glass cutting into me now. I muttered bitterly, it was all fake, every single word she said. My mind screamed louder than my voice ever could, and I felt myself sink deeper into the pit she created. I saw her earlier that day, her polished act in full force, the world eating up her charm like candy. Emily had always been skilled at wearing masks, but I never realized how easily she could slip one on and off. She waved at me then, her eyes glittering, but all I could see now was venom behind them. "She fooled everyone," I muttered, "but she won't fool me again." My chest felt like it was on fire as I sat in silence, rage swirling like a storm I could no longer contain. She thought she had the last word, the final laugh, but she didn't understand what she had awakened in me. I whispered to the empty room, "This isn't the end. This is just the beginning." It was no longer just betrayal. It was war. The days after the betrayal crawled by, each one heavier than the last. Alex moved through the world like a ghost, his body present but his soul somewhere buried beneath the weight of anger. His friends avoided him, whispers following wherever he went, as if betrayal was contagious. He heard someone mutter in the hallway, "I thought Alex and Emily were inseparable." The words hit harder than fists, Another reminder of what he lost. Nights gave him no rest. His bed was an execution chamber where memories killed him over and over again. He thought, they look at me like I'm broken. Maybe I am. But I won't stay this way. The broken foundations of his world quaked, yet inside, he could feel the first sparks of something colder, sharper, and unstoppable. Emily, meanwhile, thrived. Alex couldn't avoid the images online, her smiling at parties, her arm linked with Daniel, her laughter bright as if nothing had ever been wrong. Each post felt like a bullet, her betrayal flaunted publicly, her false victories stacking higher. She wants me to see this, Alex whispered, his voice cold. She wasn't hiding, she was performing. Every photograph, every story was another knife twisted into his gut. He slammed his phone down but couldn't stop staring. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. And humiliation demanded a response. Alone again, Alex paced his apartment like a caged animal. His chest burned with questions that would never be answered, his hands restless, his mind louder than the city outside. He remembered her voice, her promises, her fake loyalty, and the sound of his own trust collapsing beneath it. He muttered, "She killed the version of me that trusted her, but she doesn't realize what's been reborn." His reflection stared back from the cracked bathroom mirror, his eyes no longer soft but forged in fire. He wasn't sure if he was becoming a savior of his own story, or the villain Emily had awakened. But the choice no longer terrified him. When he nearly collapsed from exhaustion at the local diner, an older man slid into the booth across from him without asking. It was Marcus, the man people whispered about. The one who once fought his own demons, and came out scarred but standing. Marcus studied him with calm eyes and said, "Revenge will eat you alive if you don't control it." Alex narrowed his gaze, anger crackling under his skin. "Then I'll learn to control it, because I refuse to let her win." Marcus nodded slowly, like he'd heard the same words before from younger, angrier men. He muttered, "You remind me of myself, and I barely survived." Later that week, Sarah appeared at Alex's door, hesitant but unwilling to let him drown alone. She had once been their mutual friend, but Emily's betrayal left her torn in the middle. Sarah said softly, "I don't know if I can support what you're planning, but I can't just watch you fall apart either." Alex looked at her, exhaustion etched into his face, but also gratitude. "Then stand with me," he said, "because I can't do this alone." Sarah's shoulders slumped, her conscience heavy, but loyalty pulled harder than fear. In that moment, Alex knew he had an ally, even if it was a reluctant one. Alex mapped his first strike with stubborn focus, the kind that pretends to be wisdom when it is only pain dressed in logic. He traced Emily's routine, her posts, her smug timing, and built a plan that felt elegant until doubt slipped beneath it like ice. Sarah said, "This feels reckless," and he answered, "Reckless is all she left me." He watched the gallery's donor list, the one Emily bragged about curating, and he found the weak seam where Daniel cut corners to impress her. Marcus warned, "If you pull a thread, make sure you know the tapestry," but Alex was already tugging. He scraped records, collected whispers, and discovered a forged appraisal tied to Daniel's name. It was the kind of fraud that could stain reputations and poison contracts. His pulse thudded like a war drum as he pictured Emily reading the headline, her smile cracking in front of people she needed to believe in her. Sarah said, "If this blows back, it won't just hit Daniel," and Alex whispered, "Good." He set the drop to an anonymous arts blog with a neat folder of proof. He hovered over send, tasting the ash of triumph before the flame. "She taught me how to lie to myself," he muttered, "but I learned how to tell the truth about her." The story detonated by noon, not with fire, but with the cruel precision of rumor dressed as revelation. Daniel stormed online with denials, and Emily posted a polished statement that oozed innocence like perfume. In the alley behind the gallery, Cole stepped out of the shadow with a smile that never reached his eyes. Cole said, "Daniel wants you to stop," and Alex replied, "Tell Daniel to fix his math." Cole's shoulder twitched, something like pity dying behind boredom. "You're not ready for this kind of heat," he said, then tapped Alex's chest once, not a punch, a promise. Sarah grabbed Alex's sleeve and pulled him back, whispering that this was not the win they needed. Marcus later exhaled slow and said, "You rattled the nest. Expect wings and stingers." Alex stared at the gallery facade, clean glass reflecting a sky that refused to care. He muttered, "Then let them come," but the bravado felt thin where fear gnawed. The first steps toward revenge were not a march but a stumble across broken glass, each shard a lesson he had to bleed to learn. That night, Alex opened a folder he had avoided, a quiet graveyard of screenshots and receipts tied to Lily. She was the one who first trusted Emily with her internship application, the one who vanished from the program when a rumor bloomed like mold. Alex heard Lily's shaky voice in his memory, saying she felt blacklisted by an invisible hand. He found the emails Emily forwarded to a board member, sprinkled with innuendo that drained Lily's credibility without a single provable lie. Sarah read along and whispered, "This is surgical cruelty." Alex said, "This is the debt," and his anger cooled into something sharper. He traced the path of those messages to a timestamp and a login Emily used from her apartment. Marcus said, "Grief makes terrible fuel. Respect it or it burns you," and Alex nodded without looking up. He compiled a dossier that did not shout. It murmured with receipts and gentle, lethal timestamps. He felt the floor steady under his feet, not because vengeance was noble, but because it was suddenly precise. Marcus invited Alex to a quiet boxing gym that smelled of chalk and old victories, the kind of place where pride learns humility. Over the hum of lights, Marcus said, "You're building a case and a coffin at the same time." Alex threw a slow jab and asked if control meant mercy. Marcus replied, "Control means you choose the cost." He told a story about a man he once hunted with paperwork and truth, until there was nothing left to live in afterward. "Win cleaner than I did," he said, taping Alex's wrist with calm hands. Alex felt the ache in his shoulders and the clarity in his mind, a rhythm punching the noise out of his thoughts. Sarah waited on the bench, scrolling through public board minutes, and called, "Emily chairs a vetting subcommittee next week." Alex said, "Then that is where we start the fall." Marcus nodded without pride or fear, as if victories only mattered when they did not rot you from inside. Alex prepared the second strike with patience that felt dangerous, because patience meant he was becoming someone who could wait for pain to ripen. He set a quiet trap inside the vetting agenda, a package of facts that linked Emily's private messages to board influence, a mirror she would be forced to face in public light. Sarah asked, "What if she spins it faster than truth can walk?" And Alex answered, "Then we make truth sprint." He scheduled anonymous disclosures to land just before the meeting, each one sourced, courteous, and undeniable. Marcus read the draft and crossed out every flourish, saying, "Clean kills are quiet." Alex placed Lily's story at the end, not as a weapon, but as a witness that would not lie for him. He felt fear the way sailors feel a deep swell, not as panic, but as weight under the keel. He looked at the clock and whispered, "Tomorrow." The word did not hiss with rage anymore. It rang like a bell. Alex sat stiff in the waiting room outside the glass-walled boardroom, the hum of whispered conversations drilling into his skull. Emily strolled past in her flawless dress, perfume trailing like poison, her smile painted on as if betrayal were an art she'd mastered. She didn't know the documents were already seated, waiting like hidden blades in email inboxes. Sarah leaned close, clutching her folder, and whispered, "Once they open that file, it's over." Alex muttered, "Then let them see her truth." The door opened, polished shoes clicking on marble, and Emily stepped into the room, oblivious to the noose tightening around her neck. For the first time, Alex's rage was laced with something cleaner, precision. Hours later, back in the apartment, Sarah stood by the blinds, moonlight cutting her face in slivers. "You're starting to sound like her," she said quietly. Alex turned, eyes sharp, fists still trembling from the adrenaline of the morning. "I'm nothing like Emily." The silence that followed carried more weight than words. Rage had reshaped his face into something unfamiliar, and Sarah's fear was not of Emily anymore. It was of him. Alex wanted to scream that betrayal had changed him, that fire had no choice but to burn. But instead he sank into the chair, shoulders heavy. "I can't stop now," he whispered. Sarah's voice cracked. "That's exactly what scares me." Outside the gallery, Cole leaned against his car, posture relaxed but eyes cold. He flicked his lighter, flame dancing before snapping shut. "You think you're clever," he said evenly, "but Emily doesn't lose." Alex stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "Then she's overdue." For a second, the air thickened between them, two men locked in a quiet war of will. Cole's jaw clenched, his mask of loyalty faltering just slightly. "You don't know what she's capable of," he said, almost warning. Alex glared, didn't waver. "I know exactly what she's capable of. I lived it." Cole's silence carried more truth than his threats, and Alex felt the first tremor of doubt inside Emily's enforcer. That night, Emily poured herself wine in her pristine apartment, her silk blouse glowing under soft golden lamps. She laughed into her phone, voice sugary as ever, but her reflection in the glass window told a different story. Her eyes darted, her hand tightened on the glass. Rumors had begun to stir, her polished circle of admirers whispering questions she couldn't answer. She set the phone down, the laughter gone, replaced by a mutter. "Who's doing this?" The cracks in her armor spread invisibly, but Alex knew. It was the beginning of her unraveling. Alex sat before his laptop, the glow of headlines rising like a storm had summoned. Emily's name was tied to manipulation, whispers now given proof. His pulse slowed, steady for the first time in weeks. "The first trap," he said softly. Behind him, Marcus crossed his arms and said, "And not the last." Alex leaned back in his chair, a grim smile curling his lips. For the first time, victory didn't feel like a fantasy, it felt inevitable. Alex thought he had trapped Emily, but the deeper he dug, the uglier the truth became. The board's leaked minutes revealed layers of betrayal older than his own. She had dismantled Lily's career with precision, twisting lies into whispers that stuck like tar. Sarah's voice trembled as she read aloud. "She's been weaving this web for years." Alex's chest burned, rage pressing against the bones of his ribs. "Then I'll burn it down," he said, his tone low and venomous. The betrayal wasn't a single act anymore. It was an empire built on manipulation, every smiling mask she wore a weapon. For the first time Alex saw the scale of his enemy, and for the first time his vengeance felt less like obsession and more like justice. Alex walked circles in his apartment, hands tangled in his hair, the papers spread across the floor like a map of crimes. He whispered to himself, if she buried Lily, how many others? His voice cracked, torn between despair and fury. Sarah sat on the couch, clutching a folder to her chest. "What if she's untouchable?" she said, her voice small but heavy. Alex froze mid-step, eyes blazing. "Then you aim higher. No one's untouchable." But as the words left his lips, doubt stabbed through him. Was he building a war too big to win? Silence swallowed the room, the ticking of the clock, the only witness to his unraveling resolve. Marcus finally broke his silence. They sat in the empty gym, the echoes of past fighters hanging in the air. His voice was hoarse, stripped of pride. "Years ago, I worked for her family. They paid me to bury stories, to twist the truth into silence. I made her what she is." Alex stared at him, disbelief curdling into fury. "You're telling me you built this monster?" Marcus lowered his eyes, shame heavy in his features. "And now I'll help you unmake her." Alex's chest tightened, betrayal layered on betrayal, but now also the chance for redemption. For the first time he realized Marcus wasn't just a mentor. He was part of the foundation Emily stood on. And now he was willing to tear it down. Later, Sarah confronted Alex on a deserted street, her arms crossed against the chill, her eyes shining with something between anger and fear. "You're becoming someone I don't recognize," she said, voice sharp as glass. Alex's shoulders stiffened. "I'm nothing like Emily." Sarah shook her head, lips trembling. "If you lose yourself, she's already won." The words pierced deeper than she knew. leaving Alex silent, staring at the ground as the neon reflections of the city danced in puddles around them. In that moment, Sarah wasn't just afraid of Emily. She was afraid of losing him too. Back at his desk, Alex stared at the glowing screen, plans and documents sprawled like weapons waiting to be used. The revelations had shaken him, Marcus' confession gnawed at him, and Sarah's doubt echoed in his chest, but his resolve did not break. "She played me for years," he muttered, his voice steady now. "Now, I play her." He typed quickly, weaving his second strike, one that would hit Emily in public where her charm and polish would not save her. Marcus stood behind him in silence, watching with weary eyes. Sarah lingered near the door, torn between walking away and staying. Alex pressed enter. The war had shifted. The next move was his. The gym smelled of sweat and ghosts when Cole finally cornered Alex. The heavy bag swayed faintly, as if stirred by the tension in the air. Cole's jaw was set, fists flexing, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something softer: conflict. "Walk away before this swallows you whole," he growled, his voice sharp but weary. Alex stood firm, sweat dripping down his brow, refusing to flinch. "You're already swallowed, Cole. She owns you." The words landed between them like fists. For a heartbeat, silence suffocated the room. Cole's glare faltered, his mask of loyalty cracking under the weight of truth. He stepped forward, close enough that Alex could feel his breath, and muttered, "You don't know what you're starting." Alex leaned closer, his tone like steel. "I know exactly what I'm starting, and I'll finish it." The tension snapped, not with fists, but with the realization that Cole's certainty had begun to fracture. The gala glittered with chandeliers and laughter, but Alex saw only her. Emily floated through the crowd in a gown of silver silk, her smile weaponized as she clinked glasses and charmed admirers. She spotted him across the room, and for the first time in weeks, their eyes locked. She approached with a predator's grace, her voice soft and venomous. "You think whispers can hurt me," she said, leaning close enough for her perfume to sting. Alex's jaw tightened, his voice low and steady. "Not whispers, truth." Her smile twitched, a crack breaking the mask she wore so perfectly. For a brief, glorious moment, Alex saw fear flicker in her eyes, and it was enough to remind him why he had endured the storm. Emily struck back with precision. Within days, Alex's bank account was frozen, his email flooded with notices, and Sarah received threatening messages warning her to step away. The weight pressed down until his shoulders buckled. He sat in his apartment, head buried in his hands, the city lights cutting thin lines through the blinds. "She'll ruin me before I ruin her," he muttered, voice hoarse with despair. For the first time the war felt bigger than him, heavier than the rage that fueled him. His phone buzzed relentlessly, each vibration a reminder of how far her reach stretched. Yet, even in his lowest moment, the fire in his chest refused to die. Marcus entered with a manila envelope, his face carved with the weight of decades. "I kept this hidden," he admitted, placing it on the table with trembling hands. "Files that show how deep her family's corruption runs. I was paid to bury them. My sins end with her." Alex looked at him, stunned. "You'd sacrifice everything?" Marcus's eyes burned with quiet conviction. "I already did once. This time, it's for the right reason." Alex's throat tightened. Marcus wasn't just offering information. He was offering himself as collateral, burning the last bridges of his life to light Alex's path. For the first time, Alex felt the full cost of war. It demanded not just rage, but sacrifice. Fueled by Marcus' sacrifice, Alex worked into the night, weaving the final strike. His hands typed with steady precision, every keystroke a bullet aimed at Emily's empire. Leaks prepared, evidence lined up, the plan moved like a sharpened blade. Sarah hovered nearby, torn between fear and loyalty, while Marcus stood in silence, knowing he had given Alex his last weapon. When the final file uploaded, Alex whispered to himself, "This is the end game." And for the first time his voice carried not rage, but certainty. The storm wasn't circling anymore. It was here. Emily's name splashed across headlines, sponsors withdrawing, allies fleeing. Her carefully built empire cracked like glass. Alex watched from afar, whispering, "Fall. Emily, fall the way you made me." Cole appeared at Alex's door, eyes tired. "She's done. I won't fight for her anymore." Alex nodded slowly. "Then fight for yourself." For once, Cole's silence carried no threat, only relief. Sarah finally stepped beside Alex again, voice firm. "If this ends her, let it end you too. Don't keep carrying the fire." Alex met her gaze, nodding, his breath steady for the first time in weeks. He returned to Lily's photo, placing it on his desk. "This was for you," he whispered. Her absence weighed heavy, but for the first time, it felt like justice carried her name, not silence. Emily stood alone in her apartment, wine glass shattered at her feet, world collapsing in silence. Across the city, Alex closed his laptop, whispering one final line. "We were never friends, just enemies waiting to be born."